Welcome to American Gypsy Podcast. I am your host, Gypsy, and today we have a special guest, Nava Israel, and she is a published author, lifelong social and cultural innovator, entrepreneur, and many more things. Welcome to the show, Nava.
Thank you so much. I love being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Glad to have you here. So go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your background.
Sure. Well, people who sort of are approaching their sixth decade have a lot to tell. So
I'm sure.
I will try to do it as briefly as I can. So I was born in what was then the Soviet Union, so behind the Iron Curtain. And that gave me a very interesting perspective on what it looks like when you are under a tyranny, basically, when you are told what to think, when you are told what to do, and all under the guise of this is what's the best for everyone, right? And then as I grew up, my family and I, we basically escaped to Israel, which is our ancient homeland. I'm Jewish, and we lived there. I lived there about half of my life, 30 some years. I grew up there, went to the military, got my degrees in clinical nutrition, my PhD in epidemiology, all while being enormously intrigued with why do our lives look the way they look? Why are we governed by systems that make no sense? Why are we taught to hate each other? Right? Why are we taught to hate others that are not like us? Why are we taught to compete? And we are taught that for you to compete, someone must lose. Sorry, for you to win, someone must lose. All of these things made absolutely no sense to me. And I spent many, many years throughout my life seeking patterns that will explain this inexplicable, disturbing view that I saw around me, even though there are also many beautiful patterns and beautiful things in our lives. The things that are less beautiful are somehow more impactful on everyone and on the world and on our earth. And so my obsession with seeking patterns and seeing what explains what connects with what, led me to lifelong observations of patterns. My PhD in epidemiology is basically, so no connection with COVID. I know that there was a lot of, the word epidemiology flew right and left when there was COVID, but it has got nothing to do with viruses. Epidemiology is basically the science of statistics, where you look for patterns of what connects with what can predict what can hopefully explain what. And, and my thesis was based or focused on human behavior, on what could predict, what were the predictors of how people make their decisions, how they behave eventually. Is it the knowledge? Is it their attitude? Is it their education, et cetera, et cetera? So that was very informing and very interesting. And then with my own family, with two kids, I immigrated with my husband to Canada, which is sort of the loveliest, one of the more peaceful, quiet places on earth, where the most predominant word is sorry, and began my life here again. So I'm twice the immigrant, which teaches a lot as you move from culture to culture, because you learn about human beings from very different perspectives when you are new to a culture. Oh, sorry. I have a storm here. I hope it doesn't make a lot of noise in the recording.
No worries.
Um, and um, so I learned a lot here as well. I changed my whole career and decided to focus on social justice, which so my first half of life, I would say, was focused on healing through nutrition, through other ways, but that was my focus. And then when I came here, I decided that healing has broader contexts than physical. And emotional healing is as important, if not more so. And so I went into the whole area of social justice uh, and created initiatives that support the fair and smooth integration of immigrants into the Canadian life, Canadian culture, Canadian workplaces, changing policies, changing uh, employers' viewpoints, changing the ways that colleges and universities treated immigrant professionals, etc. So I've been doing that for many years. And that really gave me that additional flavor of other cultures. I mean, Israel is also very, very multicultural. You would not believe it, but it's extraordinarily multicultural. Canada as well. I don't think there's one place on earth where people did not come from to Canada. And it is a thing of beauty. Absolutely. There's so much beautiful integration that's happening here. Not perfect yet. By far, there's much, much more to be done here in that regard, but still miles and miles ahead of many other places in the world of integration between different ethnicities and cultures and religions, where there is genuine separation between church and state, where people genuinely live in peace with one another, where someone who's Israeli can have an Iranian as their best friend. So that to me really gave me hope for a better world, that there are possibilities out there to do it better. And then in the last 5 years, well, some years ago, something drastic happened to me beyond all the rest of it. A memory, a painful memory opened in my mind, a memory that's been suppressed from early childhood of abuse. And suddenly, all those million pieces that I've collected throughout my life and looked for explanations of how these pieces connect and how they explain us and what we do here, suddenly everything fell into place. It's one of these pivotal moments that, as if you're walking and everything is blurry, and suddenly you put on your glasses and everything is clear. And that clarity showed me a model that is so surprisingly easy and intuitive, because we all live it, and yet so profound, that explains how we as humans take every good solution we come up with and then turn it into an oppressive, hyper controlling, harmful, abusive system. And then as we topple one of them, because we suddenly wake up and we say, this is bad, let's do better, we move on, we come up with a new solution that we believe is much better. And as time goes by, we turn it again into an oppressive cone. So my model is called the cone model, because it is shaped as a cone that contains those that are the subjects of these cones. So that's sort of my journey today. And I released a book. These are my 5 seconds of promotion. This is my book. It's called Controlled, as in controlled. This is not a typo. And the subtitle is How We've Lost Our Freedom and How to Reclaim It, with the emphasis on we can reclaim it. This is not how our story ends. So
What
here,
is an example of the cone model?
yeah, I'll give you many examples. So let's start with the most basic example that I think is simplest to understand. So one typical example is a cult. So think of a cult, any type of cult, where the leader knows exactly what they're doing, right? They are exploiting, they are using their followers for their own purposes. Now, the leader can be self-aggrandizing and completely delusional and truly believing that they are some kind of deity, right? And everyone that follows that leader, which is usually a man, they, although not necessarily, there are women-led cults as well, but usually I would say 80 to 90% are men. And their followers believe in that imaginary deity, and they follow them through hail and fire, and they would kill for him and they would die for him, and some do. They would allow him to rape them, they would allow him to rape their children, like anything goes, because there's this mind control of the what I call the cone master that sits on top, that creates a mental environment of mind control where people lose their freedom, lose their voice, lose their rights, and are happy with that, or believe that they are happy with that. And it's a neat mind trick that cone leaders make. And if you tell someone from that cult, everyone outside the cult can see what's happening inside, can see the sickness of this system. But the people inside, most of them believe in it and would die for it. Some of them are starting to doubt and question it, but they are silenced, they are shamed, they are punished for being the heretics and the traitors, the internal traitors, or they are cast out. So this is like the one extreme, simple to understand kind of cone and how it works. Now the cone, I won't go into how a cone is built, because that's a whole story as well, but people can read it in my book. But I'll give you another example of a cone, because a cult may sound like, oh, it's them, it's the weird people, it's the suckers, it's the idiots, right?
Yeah.
But here's another example of and two people. So two people can be in a relationship. One is an abuser, the other is the abused. Do all abused people know that they live in an abusive relationship? Surprisingly, most don't. And that is, again, the evil art of a cone master. So the abuser, and it's usually a narcissistic abuser, who knows how to, who identifies all the buttons that we have that they can press to make us feel loved and listened to and appreciated and finally seen, truly seen. And then they use all of our vulnerabilities when we expose them against us. They make us feel small and unworthy. They make us feel crazy. They make us feel as if we are the ones abusing them. So there's this whole, they isolate us from our support systems. They say that, you're betraying me when you have other friends than me, I'm the only one that you need. So there's a whole buildup of abuse, and abuse can be mental, but it can also be physical, and even physical when it is so obvious that this is an abuse. Many people are so thoroughly mind controlled that they are saying he's doing it because he loves me. It's my fault. If I only do better by him, I made him do it. So all of these things are signs that you live in a deep, deep cone, and very controlling cone. So these are two examples that are fairly extreme and yet sadly very common. Um,
Yeah, and I see the pattern between the two, even though they're two different situations. Um, the pattern is like the people inside of this cult or group or organization, whatever it is, they don't see through the illusion that people from outside of it do. So, what do you feel like keeps these people from seeing the illusion? Is it being broken mentally, spiritually, whatever it is? What do you feel like is the issue?
yeah. You know, there are many reasons why when we are inside of a cone, we don't see we are inside of it. One is that cone builders are artists at making us believe their version of the truth. And they prey on our vulnerabilities. And our vulnerabilities can be very different in many. For example, one vulnerability can be lack of confidence. And then we are looking for someone who will tell us that if we just follow them and obey them, we are worthy. And that's what we want to hear. That finally we are worthy. Because that lack of confidence is a voice in our mind that tells us you're not worthy. You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. You will never be loved. It's all of these things that we get from our environment, from our family. Like our family can be abusive, right? Or within a culture, for example, women who grow up in environments that are very patriarchal we are being fed from day one that we are not as good as men. We are not as smart as men. We are not as powerful. We are not as worthy. We must be beautiful and perfect to be loved. We cannot age, otherwise, we will be ugly and never be loved. You know, so all of these societal effects make us lose our self worth and our confidence. And then, if someone comes and does the love bombing on us and says, "Oh, you are wonderful. I hear you. I see you. I will make you grand." We're like, yes, finally, finally, you know? And then once we get into that, it is very difficult to get out of it, even when suddenly the behavior of this leader changes. We don't change. We're already there. We're already captives. Or there can be other vulnerabilities, such as many people, well, actually, most of us don't like the feeling of uncertainty or ambiguity. We don't like ambiguity. I want to be sure. I want to be able to predict what's going to happen tomorrow, right? That's why we love weather forecasts. I want to know what I'm going to be wearing tomorrow. I don't want to get caught in the rain unprepared, right? And so it's that need for certainty. And for some people who grew up in very uncertain environments, be it maybe they were neglected or unloved or abandoned, or they grew up in environments of war or natural disasters, and it's part of their personality as well, they grow up to feel uncertain and fearful of what's going to happen, of what can I not predict. And then if someone comes to you and says, I know for sure where we're going, what we need to be doing, I will give you that certainty. You're like, huh, thank God. That's what I need. My big leader who knows better, right? And then once you're in their charms, it's very difficult to break free because you stop seeing, that's it, they solved your problem. So we have all kinds of these kinds of vulnerabilities that I call them puppeteers, right? The exploiters and puppeteers smell our blood in the water, and they know how to approach us in order to gain our trust. They can play the shepherd. You know, I always laugh at the analogy of the shepherd, because if you think about it, the shepherd is not the friend of the sheep. It's not. Sheep are not even their pet, right? Sheep are nothing but food and wool and milk, right? That's it. So the shepherd that we revere as that person who will lead us, the trusted parent figure, is often using this ruse of the trusted leader and parent figure, by using us as their sheep, by exploiting us, by using us as the expendables, as the means to their power and money. And we are blind to it because they give us that sense of, finally, I have a leader, a parent, right? Someone who cares for me, who understands me. I mean, look at politicians. I'll give you Trump as an example. And this is not a political statement. This is just a personality analysis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trump uses all the tricks in the book. He may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but when it comes to manipulation, he is great because he knows everything that people want to hear from him. He plays the shepherd who will lead us into making America great again. He plays the superstar. We all love celebrities. He plays the persona of the partner. I know your pain. I hear you. I am one of you, which he is nothing of the sort, right? But it doesn't matter. Everyone says, yes, he is one of us. He hears us. He understands us, right? So he plays to, and there's the persona of the truth-telling rebel. I'm going to tell the harsh truths, even if they are unpopular. Yeah, we love truth tellers. And then he says, and I'm your savior. You're welcome. Right? So he plays all these personas that speak to our needs of being certain, being loved, being heard, being led by someone smart and who knows what needs to be done. And that is the allure of cone builders and coal masters, that once we are trapped in there's very little out for us. Right? That's one of the challenges that we are facing. And there's no talking to them, right? Just like cult members, try to convince a cult member that they are a cult member. There's going to be no listening there. And not because they are stupid people. This is not a matter of intelligence at all. It's all emotional. It's all emotional.
Yeah, and it seems like it's beneficial for people to figure out, get some self-awareness to figure out what their triggers are, where they're broken. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is. Your weaknesses, which really are wherever you're lacking self-love or um, you've been abused in certain areas, and even emotional abuse. I think that's the hardest one to recognize sometimes. But
Absolutely.
it's interesting to see how, from a micro level and a macro level of like a whole nation being manipulated.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing with cones. Some cones are more visible, like a cult, or like think North Korea, right? Of nowadays. You can tell this is tyranny, or Iran. You can see that these are tyrannies. One is a religious tyranny, one is a ideological tyranny. It doesn't matter. A dictatorship is a dictatorship at the end of the day. But actually, what's interesting is that most big cones in our lives are completely invisible to us, completely, to most of us. And I'll give you a few examples that may surprise at least some of the audience of this podcast. For example, We may think that we live in democracies, right?
Mm.
But do we really? Are these really democracies? If tomorrow you decide to run for president and you don't have millions backing you up and powerful people to lobby for you, can you be the next president? No, you can't. That alone makes it not really a democracy. That is an oligarchy where only the rich and powerful can bring themselves to places of power, or at least 80% of them, right? Maybe some unique unicorns, can ride other thermals and get into power with integrity. But when 80% cannot afford integrity to get to the top, that is not a democracy. A democracy is where, most people think that a democracy is just a matter of the majority rules. But that is only half the equation. It's the majority rules in a way that supports the needs of all, including the minorities. So it's not, I'm the majority and I'm going to do whatever I want. And since you're in the minority, screw you, right? I'm not going to fund you. I'm not going to serve your needs because you're in the minority. That is how a lot of democracies work nowadays. But that is not democracy. That is not the meaning of democracy. The fact that there are a lot of democracies where religion still has a hold, there's no full separation between church and state, that makes it partial theocracy. That is not a democracy, right? And I'll give you really obvious examples that may blow your mind. Okay, why is bigamy or polygamy illegal? Why is it illegal to marry more than one person?
I'm not sure. I didn't think about that actually.
Right? We all take it for granted. I
Mm.
mean, obviously you cannot marry more than, but why is it obvious? Where did it come from?
Mm.
It came from the Bible. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
came from religions. It didn't come from any state-based or logic-based or society reasoned cause, right?
Mm.
Abortions that are now suddenly all questioned again. These are things that clearly come from other cones that control us, even without us realizing that. And so I'm saying, even things that we think are all open and free range, like a democracy, are cones, but they're sort of invisible cones because we were taught to revere them. We were taught to be proud of them. I'll give you another cone that we don't see: nationality.
Mm. I was just thinking that.
Yeah. Oh, nationality is one hell of a cone that we grow up in. We grow up to sing our anthem. I know in the US, you recite your pledge
Pledge
of
of Allegiance.
allegiance to the flag. Like, if that is not brainwash, I don't know what is, right? Like, and you are taught that being patriotic is your duty as a citizen, and being patriotic means that you feel that you are better than others. And you feel that when others come, they have to become you because this is the real patriotism, right? And
Mm.
you believe that in order to defend you, it's okay to kill others if you just even suspect them of being a threat, right? So, nationality is this big ass cone that all of us grow up in, and we
Oh, I lost connection.
I spoke about the invisible, like the nationality, the patriotism,
Yeah.
but there are so many other cones that we don't see. And I gave the example previously of us women, for example, but not only women, men as well. The beauty industry is a huge cone
Mm.
that controls, and it's a commercial cone where we are made to believe that we are insufficient without their products, that we are unlovable without that next diet, that next exercise, that next cream and serum, that next uh, uh, surgery or whatever it is that we need to be finally beautiful and loved. And that, again, is a lifelong process. And we can't even identify that one person that does it, because it's a whole industry that's in on it, that's creating these constant environments of, you need us, you really need us, and without us, you're nothing.
Mm.
But the worst thing is that many of the areas in our lives, like our education, our media, our justice system, our even modern science, they are all given to cones, and they are all governed by cones that lock us in invisible, I call it electric fences. You know how, the dogs that you put a collar on, and there's like a perimeter with,
Yep.
with like an electric signal, and when they
Yeah.
try to cross, they get zapped. Okay, we are having these zappers in so many
Mm.
areas of our lives. And I'll give you an example that, just by talking about it, someone might, censor this podcast. And it's about COVID and what
Mm.
happened during COVID, and the vaccines and the mandates, and, all of these things that happened in a way that is the most unscientific as you can get. And because there was not enough evidence scientifically, it's not a political statement. Scientifically, there was not enough evidence about the vaccines. No one checked the companies that are making them, checked and rechecked their data. It was all like, yes, let's force everyone to get this vaccine. We don't really know what it does, whatever. Let's just do it, right? And then suddenly you saw with your eyes how a system that claims to be scientific and open and questioning became this locked religion almost, right?
Mm.
And that statement of trust the science, right, that Fauci kept using, which is another way of saying shut up and do what you're told. That's what it really was. For all the people who are scientists and were asking the difficult questions, because that's what science is about. It is about asking questions, looking for evidence, weighing the evidence, weighing the data, questioning the data. Suddenly, it was forbidden to question the data. And that is a telltale of a cone, an oppressive cone that silences you. People were fired for asking questions. People were shamed, discredited, censored. Like the censorship was completely out of hand, right?
Mm.
So sometimes it's the systems that we trust the most that govern our lives are cones. Okay, but most of them are invisible cones, and we only see it when a big crisis happens. And even then, how many people listened to the critics? How many people were willing to trust the science without being able to question it, right? Because when you're scared, you're looking for one simple answer. You're not looking to question. You're not looking to inquire. You're not looking to doubt. You just want for someone who knows their shit to tell you what to do. That's it. And those who love telling us what to do are happy to oblige. So, this is the situation that we're living in so many areas of our lives.
And so what do you feel like is the solution to these getting out of these coned paradigms?
Oh, there are solutions. I'll start with what is not a solution, even though intuitively it feels like it is. The reason we keep seeing cone after cone after cone is because when we finally awaken to the fact that we are inside a cone and it exploited us and lied to us and harmed us, we become really, we respond, people respond in different ways. Some people are like, la, 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 I haven't heard, I haven't seen, just keep knitting, right? I don't want to know that. I don't have the mental capacity to even consider it, right? I'll just keep believing and that's it. Other people are like, really? That's what happened? I was lied to, I was betrayed. And then there's that anger, which is a justified anger, and the sense of betrayal and the sense of vengeance. Like I want to burn them down. And you hear it now, burn the rich, right? It's the new saying, burn the rich, because we already are starting to see how these oligarchs and billionaires are drinking our bone marrow, our societal and earth bone marrow of everything, and accumulate it. And so we start being angry and vindictive, and we want to burn things down. That energy of anger is understandable. But when you bring it to your next solution, there's that, let's build something else. Let's build something better and different. And you bring all that anger in there. All you do is you build the next cone in line. I'll give you a simple example. Being woke is a wonderful thing. It is us awakening from cones. But how do we do this woke? Changes everything. If we do it through anger and vengeance, and we shame people and we blame people and we cancel people and we do the cancel culture as part of the woke, it's just another cone. Then you're not allowed to make a mistake. You're not allowed to question. You're not allowed to speak. That's a cone. So what if it's social justice driven? A cone is a cone. Communism was all about power to the laborers, right? Power to the workers. There's nothing more beautiful than that. And look where it got, right? Because it went with all the anger and vengeance and dogmatism and black and white and right and wrong. So this is the wrong way. Okay? The right way is to say, I feel this anger. I feel betrayed. Emotions are legitimate. I feel traumatized. I feel sick to my stomach from everything I'm seeing. I need to heal. You said it at the beginning, right? And I loved it. We have to start with ourselves. We have to find ways to heal these wounds in ways that don't inflame the next disease, right? That don't just take that whole anger and just plant it into the next move of our lives. We need to learn to go through that, not to lock it in, because that's just shit. That won't give us anything. If we lock our emotions, that's just poison. We need to work through it, work with it, heal, and then say, I don't need this cone anymore. I don't need to burn it. You can't change a cone. You cannot change an abuser. You cannot. They benefit from being an abuser. They won't suddenly change their heart because you have awakened. And so trying to change systems from within is a losing battle. Try to change the police force. Good luck to you. Right?
Yeah.
Try to convince them not to shoot people of color just because they have the wrong skin color. Like, this is an old system that operates from old foundations. The bones are there. You cannot, you cannot morph the police into being. No, you have to walk out of that system and say, let's build better systems that will prevent the conditions that create crime, that prevent the conditions that create racism, that heal people, that give people the love and support and conditions that they need, so that they don't even need policing. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
outside the system that the solution has to happen. And you cannot bring anger into it. You can only bring love and forgiveness. And forgiveness is not about excusing. It's not about saying, oh, that police officer who shot that woman, let's forgive him. That is not what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness is about saying, I see them where they are. You know, these people are locked. They don't see, they don't understand how powerful this cone is around them. It is not up to me to awaken them. I can try, I can protest, I can do, yeah, but I can't be swallowed into that. I let go of them. I let go of them. And I find that way of building a better life for everyone, a life that will harm no one, that will heal everyone. And I know that it sounds like utopia and unrealistic and, floaty, but it isn't, because there are so many people and organizations out there that are already doing it. Already. We just don't hear about them because our big systems, the big cones, are silencing that information. They are siloing us from knowing that better things are out there and they are working beautifully without the government, without the police, without the military, without the without World Bank, without all of these things that control us and tell us there's no other way. You don't like it? Too tough, no other way. That's not true. There are so many beautiful things that are already happening with the environment, with social rights, with us remembering that we are one, not separated groups. So that's the only solution. And if you think small, it's the same thing. You are in an abusive relationship. Do not waste your time on trying to change your abuser, or on trying to heal the abuser, or on trying to convince yourself that you can find better ways to live within this abuse. That is, or being so angry that you want to kill them. Okay? The real solution is finding ways to heal, finding ways to let go, to let be, let yourself be, walk away with the hopes that he doesn't kill you in the process. That's not a simple thing, right? Sometimes it's dangerous. I'm aware of that. But if you can find a way to walk away from any kind of abuse and look forward versus backwards and say, look, the world is mine. The world is mine to reinvent myself. The world is mine to live as a wholesome human being. The world is mine not to rely on anyone for anyone's approval. The world is my oyster. I can now rebuild myself. I can be my own person. And if one day I will find a partner who appreciates me just the way I am and is a good partner for a life, that is wonderful. And if not, also wonderful, because I don't need anyone's approval. I am a whole person, right? That is the only way to get out of abuse. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was a good perspective to even from a system level. It's hard not to if you're a social justice warrior or if you just care about what goes on in the environment, it's hard not to want to change the system or fight the system, and that can get so exhausting, especially if you're just emotionally or mentally affected by it. It could get crippling and tire you out, so you're not really working on yourself or your goals.
Yeah.
But I like your perspective of just get out of the system or the relationship or whatever it is, so that one, you can see clearly. Because I think when you're in it, like you said before, you're under an illusion. Um, So yeah, I do like the idea of stepping out so that you can build a new world.
And I realize that people who are activists, first of all, I have the greatest respect for people who engage in activism. It is one of the hardest things that you can do because it is so draining and it is so frustrating, and you feel like you are battling windmills, right? You're on that little donkey with your little spear, and there's this windmill, and the windmill keeps cutting your head off, right? And it can be so disheartening. And we know statistically that the level of mental health crisis and even suicides among people who are activists, political or otherwise, social activists, is very high. And because it grinds you up, and you always have to consider your own safety, your own mental safety, your own, because being a martyr maybe has its value somewhere, but actually most changes around the world, most good changes, did not happen from big activism. It happened through a parallel system growing and pulling everyone into it, right?
Mm,
A better one. um, and I think the value of activism is that when you raise your voice against injustice, you have a chance of at least awakening some people, right, who are currently dormant, who are currently unaware of this injustice, who are so busy with the breads and circuses that they don't see the bigger issues that affect everyone's lives. So there is room for activism. I'm not saying it's wrong.
mm,
What I'm saying is that activism is just one small part of the solution. Because after you've raised your voice and you've raised the awareness, that's your sign to breathe, heal, and walk out of that system and show the world that there are better ways of being. Because the problem is that so long as people are inside the code, they won't believe you that there's another way.
mm,
For them, that's the natural order of life, but it isn't. And so if you only scream, 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 hate, 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 and you don't show a better alternative, you're just killing yourself, right?
yeah.
Because most cones are too powerful to just topple, right?
Yeah.
Most
And if you
cones,
don't get out of that system, people are just looking at you like, well, you're in this system too.
yeah,
So you have to kind of, I guess, lead by example.
absolutely, absolutely. And we can, and we do. We just don't hear much about those. So these are the voices that need to be raised to say, we are here. Like an
Yeah.
important, here's a who. We are here. Come join us. We are here. There are a lot of people, for example, who fight against the big food conglomerates and big agro, who are doing terrible damage to the earth, to humanity, with their unsustainable, agricultural practice of, you know, controlling food delivery systems and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of disease in there as well, a lot of coning. And you can protest and you can raise people's awareness, but at the same time, you can have a community garden, right? And change the game. You can change. You can have these big cones fizzle out gradually by changing the game. You cannot change a religion from inside. You cannot. You can get out of it and build something more inclusive, more, spiritual, more whatever is missing within that religion that you're in, right? So it's that getting out and showing that there's another way, a better way of being, that eventually slowly drains the life out of these cones. And they lose their power because more and more people see that there's a better way, and they choose that better way instead of staying inside and burning it and fighting it and dying from it and churning it. Yeah. So there are ways.
Yeah. Um, yeah, definitely a good perspective. I really appreciate all the insights that you brought to the table. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with before we close it out? Anything about your book or anything you have going on?
Sure, sure. Well, first of all, the book is interesting. And you don't have to
I
believe me.
bet because I'm already interested. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
you
get
don't have to
one.
believe me. I released it only 2 months ago, and it already won three literary awards,
Nice.
three international literary awards. So there are other people who think it's a good book. But beyond that, um, I'm also writing soon, like by end of October, I will publish a self analysis and reflection workbook based on this book. And you won't even have to, but not everyone is a big reader or a reader of nonfiction. um, but you don't even have to. If you want something practical just for yourself, you can get that workbook. And even before you get the workbook, you are welcome to go on my website. My website is www.Nava Inc. That's NAVAINC.ca, as in Canada. So navainc.ca. And on my website, you can download for completely free a self assessment of your vulnerabilities to manipulators. Remember, we spoke about, what are these vulnerabilities that people will use to take advantage of you and to mind control you? Well, you can self-assess. It's a hefty sort of self-assessment, and at the end you will get like a number, a percentage, and you will see the different categories, and you will find where your vulnerabilities are. And once you do, you can start thinking, why do I have these vulnerabilities? Who put them into me? And the second question is, who's using them, right? Who's using these vulnerabilities to control me, to sell me something, right? To mind control me.
Mm.
So this is something that you can download completely for free. You can contact me. I don't provide any therapy or anything. I'm not selling services. But if you want to keep and discuss something with me, ask me something, share your experience. I'm not a snob. I have a contact on my website. Feel free to connect with me. And again, look out for my workbook that is really helpful to figure out who your cones are and what to do with them.
Well, I really appreciate your time and insight. I'm definitely gonna have to get that book because that's my style of what I like to read.
Awesome.
Um, and for the listeners, I will have Nava's information in the description. As always, you can find us on any podcast platform and videos on YouTube. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, email americangypsy@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Peace.
Thank you so much for having me. Peace.